Hello everyone, back at it again with another video. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to fish two different ponds with one rod, one reel, and one lure. And that lure is the bottom half of a Z-Man hula sticks. I think the color is called Canada Croix, although I don't think the color is too important. I'm going to put a little Procure crawfish scent on there. When you work this bait mid-column or on the bottom, it's got these little tentacle tails at the end. I think there's 4 little tails, and they don't do much in the air, but underwater they kind of flare out a little bit, and they look like something that's maybe alive. Very vaguely, and I mean very vaguely, it could imitate a crawfish the same kind of way a tube would imitate a crawfish. It doesn't really look like exactly like a crawfish. There's some very realistic craws out now. But just that vaguely buggy looking thing on the bottom. So I started out the trip targeting trout. The water is getting a little bit warm, and I think the trout moved out deeper. So after a little bit, I started catching bass, and then I got the idea, well, why don't I just fish for bass? That would be easy. So after I got a couple out at the first pond, I switched to a second pond, which is not a trout pond at all. It's just a bass and perch pond. So you can see my retrieve here for the trout. I'm shaking that rod as I'm reeling. I'm reeling a little bit fast. There's some weeds coming up now. That's another sign the water's getting warmer. And I have to stay above those weeds, otherwise I get fouled up in the weeds. So I'm reeling a little bit fast, but it's going to work out. Those hula sticks are a great value. Actually, I mean, most of the Z-Man plastics are a great value. But I fish the hula sticks on a weedless Ned head, and then I cut them after I wear out the plastic. And it takes a while, maybe 25 fish to wear out the plastic. And you can cut them with scissors or a razor blade or a box cutter, whatever. Just have a clean slice right behind where the egg sac is in the middle of the bait. Now I got another bait that I can use for trout or bass or perch or whatever and catch another 25 on it. So it's very economical. Each bait, unless you look at that little smallmouth. Yeah, there's the bottom half of the Z-Man hula sticks. And it'll last, around 50 fish unless you snag it on a rock or a tree down there or something like that, or get cut off by a pickerel. It's a very economical bait, and I end up catching a lot of fish on them. And I fish them multiple different ways for different species. Trout, I tend to fish mid-column. If the fishing's really slow, I'll try to go as slow as I can without snagging weeds or leaves on the bottom. But for bass, typically I'm going to fish these baits on the bottom, and I'll use the rod to work them. And you'll see that a little bit later on. I got a bass here.
Oh, that's okay.
The size 1 hook that's on the jig head is a little bit small for the bass, but it works great. Hook just pops right out, easy release, off she goes. So yeah, I kind of struck out with the trout there, but I was catching bass and I decided I'd hit a bass and perch pond. And yeah, this is just fishing 101. I used to fish this pond many years ago before I owned waders. I'd start wet wading in just a bathing suit starting in April, late April. And by the end, my legs would be bright pink. But the fishing was pretty good, so that helped me keep warm. And it didn't take too long before I started catching bass here. Now, over the years, this pond has changed quite a bit. Nice little bass. It used to be bigger bass, I'd say, 2 to 3 pounds, and smaller perch. And the way things have been going lately, it's bigger perch and smaller bass. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but that's just the way it is. And I'm here for all of it. And with a pair of waders in any kind of sandy bottom pond, anything that has reasonably good wading conditions, anybody can do this kind of fishing. You know, maybe the waders cost you $60, $70, $80, $90. You don't need a $300 pair of waders to do this. But the waders help a lot. It's allowing me to reach fish that I'd have a hard time reaching from the bank. And most of this little pond is covered in woods and things like that, and you just wouldn't have a lot of fishable area from shore. But with waders, I can wade around almost this whole pond. There's an area with cattails that at low water I could get around. It's spring right now, mid-May, and the water's a little bit high, and so if I really pushed it, I probably could get around those cattails without getting wet, but I didn't really feel like doing that. So I'd say about 80% of this pond is fishable in waders right now without really pushing the tops of my waders. And from shore, without getting your feet wet, you're probably limited to 5 or 10% of the pond right at the swimming area here. What's this? This is a yellow perch. Some of these yellow perch were pretty long. That one's not even the longest one. But they're all spawned out and they're a little bit skinny right now. They'll start to fatten up again by fall, and they'll be pretty plump into February, March. They get pretty fat. At least the females do. Now you see the retrieve is completely different than trout fishing. I cast out, wait for that Ned rig to hit the bottom, and I'm using my rod to work the bait, and I'm only using the reel to reel up the slack or try to set the hook on a fish. And usually when I'm setting the hook, I just reel set them. I don't want to swing too hard, and if I miss them, I'm going to move the bait like 3 feet. So if you reel set them, you just, even if you miss them, they usually come back for it. And it's a little hook. It really doesn't take much pressure to set that hook. I think this is one of the bigger perch. Yeah. I didn't bring a tape with me. That's another thing with, just one rod and one bait. You can pack very light. I brought some scent with me, that same Procure stuff. And I brought a pair of Forceps in case the fish took the bait too deeply. And that's it. That's really all I have other than camera gear. Yeah, that's a nice long perch. I don't know how long he was, but pretty long. I'd like to catch him again when he's closer to 2 pounds than 1. There's a couple different strategies with fishing a pond like this. Usually I try to wade out as deep as I can go. There's a swim platform out there right in front of me, a little bit to the right. Typically those will have an anchor line on the left and right side of the swim platform. So you don't want to cast right at the corners because you'll hang up. Usually in the middle is okay to cast to. I'm fishing to the left of the swim platform right now. And you can just sit here and catch fish until you run out of fish that you can reach. And that's sort of my plan right now. Or you could just catch a couple and keep walking. And I'm going to do a little bit of both. Here I've decided I've run out of fish. I'm going to keep walking and fishing. So I'm fishing while I'm walking in the water. And I'm wading out pretty deep right here. And I'm just searching for pods of fish. And if I find some quality fish, I'll stop, see how many I can catch, and then keep walking. But generally I'm going to try to stay on the move until I contact some fish. So those are the kind of the 2 techniques. You can kind of pick a spot and try to pick it apart, or I can stay on the move and try to find some active fish like I'm doing right here. Now wading in fairly deep water, these kettle hole ponds that I'm fishing, they have like, you can picture a bowl with a rim on it. And the rim of the bowl is usually shallow and sandy. And then there's a sharp drop into deeper water. And you just got to pay attention to where your feet are so you don't slide off that drop. What else do you have to watch out for? I've got pretty thick boot foot waders on. Some places they might have some broken glass in the water, or fish hooks, or snapping turtles. You got to watch your feet around snapping turtles. But I've been doing this almost my whole life, and I'm pretty comfortable wading. And we don't have any alligators around here or anything else like that that I'd have to really, worry about. In the ocean when I'm wading, I look behind me every once in a while to make sure that I'm not being followed or tracked by a seal or a shark or anything like that. But for the most part in ponds, there's not much to worry about other than accidentally slipping into deep water. Oh yeah, sometimes there's holes or spring holes. You gotta watch out for that too. The risk is that the water comes up over the waders, and well, that's just no fun, but also it can be dangerous if you slip into deeper water. It's hard to get out of that. So you never want to go past your comfort level, I'll say. And you just want to pay attention to where you are, where you're walking. Watch out for underwater logs. You don't want to trip on those and fall in the water, that kind of stuff. But, all right, enough about the safety things. This kind of fishing is very accessible. Almost anybody can do it. I've got a kind of a budget reel here and an older rod. So the cost of entry for doing this kind of fishing isn't extreme at all. And it just opens up so many more doors than just fishing from the bank or fishing from the shoreline. What's this? That's another perch. Not bad, not bad. It was kind of an even mix of bass and perch on this trip. I was kind of surprised the perch were as aggressive as they were. I'm fishing a used hula sticks here, but you could do the same thing with like a finesse TRD. I've used the big TRD and just cut it down a little bit after fishing for bass for a while with it. You could use some of the minnow style baits. But I like the Z-Man plastic for this kind of fishing because it's just so durable. I could catch fish after fish and just keep going. If you were going to use something, I don't know, even like a Yamamoto Ned Senko, which is a great Senko type Ned bait, you'd go through probably a pack of them. Maybe not that many, but they're definitely not as durable as the Z-Man plastic. And so, especially for this kind of fishing, I like to stick with the Z-Man stuff. Shaking that bait on the bottom, using the rod to move that bait along. Not so much the reel. I'm using the reel to reel up the slack. I want to stay on or near the bottom. And these fish are fairly cooperative, they're picking it up every couple casts. I just missed one there, so I'm going to slow down and see if I can stick him. There he is. Now the size 1 hook on the jig head is something I use specifically for trout. It works for bass and perch pretty well too. So it's the right size for trout, but a little bit small for bass. And if you were specifically fishing for bigger bass, I'd go with a bigger hook on that jig head, like a 1/0 or even a 2/0. These little bass aren't going to bend out this hook, but if you started tackling 3-4 pound bass, you might want a jig head with a little more oomph to it. I think I just missed one. Yeah, and I'm going to slow down, turn and look at the fish. And I stuck another one. The number 1 hook works surprisingly well for perch. You know, they've got a small mouth too, like trout do. They generally have a smaller mouth than, say, a big mouth bass. The perch are having no trouble getting that bait in their mouth. I think that's another long one too. Oh, quick release. Off she goes. I'm working my way around the pond. Years ago there was more sand here and less of this algae stuff on the bottom. It still fishes pretty similarly. Sometimes trees get blown into the water, or big branches get broken off. There's a log in front of me. I can see it right now. And you have to kind of watch out for those things, both while you're wading and also you're fishing the Ned Rig, because it's an open hook there. But what happens is the logs and the wood will float for a while, and they usually end up in 5 to 10 feet of water. So say you're casting into 20 or 15 feet of water, working it along the bottom, you're usually okay. And then when I get into shallower water, I'll reel in if I don't catch a fish. All that stuff on the water, it's not pollution, it's pollen. It's pine pollen that's blowing into the water. And there's a lot of it on this trip. I was covered in the stuff. Choking on it at times. That's a nice perch. Yeah. I don't know what's different about this place, but the perch are definitely getting bigger. It's funny how ponds change over time. There was a summer camp on this pond for years and years, and I think they still do it. And I don't know who had the idea, but they didn't think there was any fish in this pond, so they would pay to stock trout in it. And the kids might catch a couple stock trout, but most of the trout just held over until the fall, and sometimes I'd catch them in the fall. But I think some of the bass were eating them and getting pretty big. And then they stopped stocking it with trout. Maybe they figured out there's plenty of fish in here. There's no need to stock the trout. Or the trout just went into deeper water immediately and the kids didn't catch any. I don't know what happened, but I think they stopped stocking it with trout. Did you see the Forceps come out there? That one took it kind of deeply. I didn't set the hook quickly enough. But the Forceps, I was able to get way down there, pop that hook out, and that fish swam away pretty easily. Sometimes if they take it really deeply, you can use a 2 Forceps method. I think I've shown it before on this channel, but usually with single hooks. Anyway, you try to reverse the jig head with one pair of Forceps, cut the line, and then the other pair you pull it straight out. And that's a good way to minimize damage if they really take it deeply. But as long as you're paying attention and turning that handle every once in a while, you really shouldn't hook too many down deep. Another thing about waders is that you're almost at the fish's level when they're jumping and splashing around. Get a really good view of the action. It's more up close and personal than fishing from a kayak or a boat or fishing from shore. And I kind of like that aspect of it. I mean, I'm half submerged the water right now, so you're really in their element.
There he is. Oh, lost.
I think I missed one just there. See if I can get him to come back. He's playing with me. Sometimes when they're not eating it really well, it's usually the perch and not so much the bass. The bass have no trouble getting a small bait like the tail end of a hula sticks down their mouth. What's this? Oh, it's a little bass. That's what was giving me trouble. See that in front of me? That's an old spawning bed. The bass here, I think, are post-spawn. That might be why I'm catching so many small males. I think the females are recuperating a little bit. There's a lot of bass in this pond. You know, a lot of, at least around me, a lot of the smaller ponds, they kind of split into two categories. They're either completely choked with weeds, in which case a Ned Rig wouldn't be a good choice. You'd have to use a frog or some other weedless presentation. Or they're kind of sandy bowls without a ton of cover. And for those situations, a Ned Rig's kind of hard to beat. What's that? Another little bass?
There he is.
For the in-between stuff, I like fishing to Savage Ned Salamander on a weedless hook. Or the hula sticks, the full-length hula sticks on a weedless EWG style Ned jig head. I'll put those in the video description even though I'm not fishing with them today. But they can come through a sparse cover, I'd say. You know, some weeds, but not super thick. Definitely not a matted weed situation. But they'll come through most stuff that you would even think about throwing a Ned Rig at. Hey, that's another nice perch. Without the pollen all over the water, you can see into it pretty well. It's a pretty clear pond. See if I can hold on to this one. Nope. Quick release. Pretty much I'm doing the same thing all around the pond. It's nice long cast into deeper water. Let that bait hit the bottom. Shake it on the bottom a little bit. The wind's catching my line too, so I'm having to reel up that slack too. There's a few old bass beds around. If you look carefully, you can see them. Most of them are kind of small. I did see one or two bass still on beds, but for the most part they seem done. These little ponds, even this one, it's pretty deep in the middle. It's about 35 feet. They warm up quickly. So some of the deeper, say, trout lakes, they'll be 10 degrees behind these small ponds. So early in the season, it can be a good place to go because the fish will be a little bit more active when the water's warmer in here. Shake, shake, shake. There he is.
See what this
Let's see what this one is. Another perch. These guys will spawn around March down here. He's got like a hole in his head. I don't know what happened to him there. It looked too big to be a leech mark. I don't know. Maybe a turtle took a chunk out of him. I saw some big snappers in here. Big snapping turtles. And a few painted turtles that burrowed into the leaves when I came by. The rod I'm using is an old St. Croix Tournament Legend. I think it's a 610 medium light split shot rod. I don't think split shot rods are very common anymore, but you know, your typical Ned Rig rod, Nico rod, even a drop shot rod, something in that light, medium light, 6'8", 6'10", 7-foot range. If you had a medium power rod with a heavier reel, that would work fine too. Basically, you can use any kind of light, medium spinning rod for this kind of application, and it'll do just fine. Got another fish, another little bass. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll list all the gear in the video description so you can duplicate what I was doing out here today. Hopefully have some good success wherever you're fishing around the country or around the world. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!